The Pokémon series has experimented with open-world design for several games now, and Scarlet and Violet finally commit to the concept. For decades, we've been holding our breath for an epic 3D adventure, and it's finally here. Was it worth the wait? How does it improve on the formula? And do those performance issues prevent it from being fun? In this review, I'll be going in-depth into the game, section by section. I played the Scarlet version, and this will be a spoiler-free review. So, let's jump right into it. Summoned to an elite academy for aspiring Pokemon trainers, once the school year begins, you're charged with completing 3 concurrent storylines. Victory Road, in which you defeat 8 gym leaders and become a Pokemon League champion. Path of Legends, in which you must stop 5 rampaging giant Titan Pokemon and solve the mystery behind their sudden appearance. And Starfall Street, in which you must take down the 5 leaders of rebelling students, Team Star. That's a total of 18 missions, and completion of each awards you a badge, with one corresponding to each elemental type. At the same time, you'll catch Pokemon to complete the Pokédex, battle other trainers and students along the way, and discover Terastallization, this game's new battle gimmick, which has your Pokemon transform into crystalline monsters and gain an extra elemental type. The first few hours of the game have you choose a starting Pokemon and pair you up with a rideable legendary Pokemon, Koraidon or Miraidon, and after what feels like an eternity of dialogue scenes, the 18 mission locations are marked on the world map. You'll explore Paldea, the franchise's first open world region, and take on the 18 challenges in any order you like, although some are much harder than others, so you'll have to do a bit of exploring to find challenges manageable to your Pokemon's level. After completing the 3 storylines, there's a lengthy climax section in which the overarching themes and character moments boil over to cap off the game. It's a welcome change and expansion to the Pokemon formula, bolstered by the delightful school theme and strong supporting characters. Without spoiling anything, the Path of Legends story explores the theme of parental abandonment, and the Starfall Street storyline explores school bullying. It's surprising, refreshing, and unlike the Pokemon series to explore these themes. Emotionally and thematically, there's never been so much in a Pokemon game since Black and White, 11 whole years ago. The games don't entirely stick the landing, but I'm here for mature themes explored in Pokemon games, as well as the typically rote franchise trying something new. I think these storylines would really have been helped by voice acting in key moments, but I'll get into that later. The school theme is such a unique and original theme for a Pokemon game, and something we've never seen before. It's a great setup for the game, but I was overall disappointed at this aspect. Once you're released from the school into the wild, it's easy to forget that this game has you in the role of a school student. You can go back to the school and take classes, which are just long scenes of dialogue with minimal rewards, and not really worth checking out. I would have liked to see the school more involved in the storyline, perhaps having to check in from time to time and having your performance evaluated by teachers, with chapter-ending battles or such. They could have leaned harder into the school theme, especially as it's proven successful in other recent RPG franchise entries, like Persona 5 and Fire Emblem Three Houses. However, Scarlet and Violet represent a major leap forward in storytelling for the Pokemon franchise. When the game finally reaches its climax, I couldn't help feel drawn in. It's actually the first time in the Pokemon series I've felt compelled to continue for the sake of the narrative. The stakes are not only high, but personal. It's far from perfect, but considering how bland and forgettable the world and story of the previous games Sword and Shield were, it's a monumental step in the right direction for the franchise, and I hope these strides in storytelling are refined in future installments. It's a fun and emotionally satisfying experience. Once again, you're in the role of a mute but customizable avatar. There's not much to say here except that while I love characters are customizable now in Pokemon games, it's disappointing that you can only wear a school uniform and just customize accessories like hats and glasses. While personally I don't mind, it might bother a lot of people that a greater variety of fashion choices aren't available. The Academy's director Clavel takes over the role of mentor that professors had in previous games. He's a tough but fair type, with a goofier side on display during the Starfall Street storyline. He's a bit more memorable than mentor figures of recent Pokemon games. Your rival in the game is the main supporting character in the Victory Road storyline. Unfortunately, I found her to be the weakest and most forgettable supporting character in the game. She's relentlessly optimistic, and her only character trait is liking Pokemon battles. She's a bit grating and shows up only to interrupt your progress between gym challenges. She doesn't have much of an arc, and only exists to motivate the player to grow stronger. This storyline has none of the emotional nuance of the others. Arvin is your senpai or upperclassman, who has an affinity for cooking and assists you in the Path of Legends route. While he originally comes off as cocky and arrogant, his arc forms the emotional backbone of the narrative. The writing staff made a lot of effort with his characterization, and his storyline deals with illness and parental abandonment. It's an unexpected theme for the franchise, but it's handled well. I didn't like Arvin much at first, but enjoyed his story arc the most in the end. Team Star are the villainous organization of the game, comprised of rebellious and delinquent academy students. They have no grand ambitions to destroy the universe like previous villain teams, and are the third iteration of the Troublemaker style team, after Sun and Moon's Team Skull and Sword and Shield's Team Yell. Finally, Game Freak have perfected this concept with Team Star. The 5 team leaders, as well as their victim Penny, have unique personalities and flair, and as the storyline develops, we are shown their weaknesses and humanity, giving the team more complexity and empathy. Their storyline deals with the theme of school bullying, and this is the game's best use of the school theme. It is still a Pokemon game after all, so it's not the most amazing dissection of bullying and victimization, but I give credit to the developers in trying something different. The payoff is satisfying, and I'm thrilled that this franchise, which has a lot of younger players, is tackling a difficult topic that's important to their audience. The gym leaders and Elite Four are still about as typical as it gets for Pokemon. A lot of different looks and personalities, but their appearances are so short that you don't really get a good sense of who they are. They are just mid-game bosses, and that's all they are. As for the Pokemon themselves, wow, this is a rock-solid generation. Recent generations of Pokemon have always had good-looking monsters, and Scarlet and Violet are mostly no exception. Like Sword and Shield, Pokemon have a lot more rounded features this time, which makes them cuter, and there's a lot of variety in shape, size, color, and type. Not having spoiled the game before launch, it was a joy to explore the world and discover new monsters. Overall, this is still a Pokemon game, and while far from perfect, Scarlet and Violet shows a lot of progress in terms of characterization, backed up by varied and interesting Pokemon. A good step forward for the franchise. For the first time in the series, Scarlet and Violet take place in a fully open world, Paldea. It's the next iteration of what was previously experimented in Sword and Shield with its wild area, and Legends Arceus with its multiple open areas. It's incredibly exciting that finally a Pokemon game is taking place in a fully realized 3D open world. Unfortunately, that excitement is spoiled by the game's horrible performance issues. I'll get into that more in the performance section. For the most part, there's a really cohesive idea of an open world map. Taking inspiration from Spain's culture and landscape, Paldea has a great variety of biomes, like plains, dense forests, oceans, snowy mountains, deserts, and more. The Spanish influence sets it apart from previous games' regions, and gives the region a pleasant atmosphere. Topographically, there's a lot of variety, and using your rideable legendary Pokemon, you'll have to jump, swim, fly, and climb to explore every area. Dotted around the map are towns, each one having a distinct Mediterranean visual style and flair. Earlier in the game, you'll find a quaint olive-growing town, and later you'll find a wintry mountain village, to name a few. The map is large and varied, clearly inspired by Breath of the Wild, and makes for a great setting for Pokemon's first foray into open world gameplay. Unfortunately, this game does have issues with the way it uses environments, especially in the way Pokemon spawn and where secrets are hidden. As an example, later in the game after I had unlocked the ability to climb, I found an ominous looking cave hidden on top of a mountain surrounded by a moat. While it looked important and I went inside hoping to find a rare Pokemon or item, I was only greeted by a common TM. If I see a mysterious and important looking cave in a hard to reach area, I expect to be rewarded for my efforts. This is the case throughout the game. While the map has some landmarks and curious spots, only sometimes are you rewarded for adventuring. What's the point of climbing a sheer cliff face when the Pokemon you find at the top are the same as the ones found at the bottom? While it's a good map, I found this lack of incentive to go out of your way disappointing. The recently released Xenoblade Chronicles 3 did this well, in which exploring a long cave or mountain path rewarded you with an impressive view, unique monsters, and rare items. Pokemon could learn a few things from that game. Similarly, while each town has its own aesthetic, their lack of depth leaves much to be desired. For example, you're only able to speak to some NPCs, who occasionally give a bit of lore to the town's culture. It's not really enough to truly feel you've stepped into a new place. Similarly, you cannot enter most buildings despite them having doors. Some buildings like stores can be entered, and many cannot, yet there is not enough visual distinction between doors that can be entered and those that can't. I found myself running into doors that might as well have just been painted on. This breaks immersion in the open world design, as well as tradition with previous Pokemon games, in which old town houses were able to be entered, with NPCs inside giving tips, lore, and items. For the most part, Paldea is an ambitious region, and is a huge improvement over the simple corridor that was Galar in Sword and Shield. Taking inspiration from Breath of the Wild's open world was a smart decision for the Pokemon franchise, and I hope future games refine the concept and more generously reward players for their exploration and curiosity. Pokémon is back, with no major changes to the battle system from previous games. It's still turn-based battling, exploring, and catching. Compared to Sword and Shield, it's an improvement, but compared to Legends Arceus, it's a disappointment. While Arceus smartly introduced catching from the overworld with no need to battle, Scarlet and Violet removes it. To catch a Pokémon, you're forced to battle with them. It's a bizarre and disappointing omission. I didn't feel as motivated to catch Pokémon this time around, as battling takes time, you can accidentally knock out the Pokémon, and the capture rate of your Pokéballs might be low, leading to a protracted protracted battle just to catch a simple Pokemon. It's a bit regressive compared to recent games like Pokemon Go, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and Legends Arceus, in which the catching process had been sped up. While on the subject of speeding up, a lot of battling has been blessedly sped up compared to Sword and Shield, yet slowed down compared to Legends Arceus. Gaining experience happens concurrently with navigating to the next phase of battle, negating the need to forward through dialogue boxes, which is nice. Yet, battle animations are longer, and buffs, debuffs, status conditions, and item use creates another dialogue box in the flow of battle. When multiple of these happen during one turn, it's a long turn and a longer battle. Additionally, effects of buffs and debuffs aren't displayed during battle with a visual indicator, so you might lose track of what stat changes have occurred. Battle is good, but still not perfected into the smooth and efficient experience we've been craving for decades. The new gimmick of this game is terrestrialization. Dynamaxing from Sword and Shield has gone the way of Mega Evolution and been dropped, and this is its replacement. Once per battle, you can change one Pokemon's elemental type, represented by a crystalline design and a matching elemental crown on its head. For example, your Pikachu could terrestrialize into another type, with its electric typing replaced by flying or whatever else. It's a better and more interesting mechanic than Dynamaxing and Mega Evolution, and gives good variation. It can be used on any Pokemon and in any area, so it gives all Pokemon a chance to literally shine. Rare Terra-type Pokemon can be found in the open world or in raid battles, returning from Sword and Shield. Raid battles are still one of the most fun and rewarding parts of the game, especially played online with friends. However, I'm not really a fan of the way terrestrialization looks. Crystal Pokemon look a bit tacky and silly, and don't entirely represent what the mechanic is. Crystallization gives the impression that Pokemon get stronger, but it does not improve their defensive stats at all. Furthermore, the terrestrialization animation takes way too long. You'll get really tired of watching it in already protracted battles. It's especially frustrating during raid battles, as these battles have a time limit, and yet the timer still keeps going during the lengthy animation sequence. So if you're pressed for time, you'll want to skip terrestrializing altogether. It's a stupid decision, as Terra Pokemon versus Terra Pokemon is the whole gimmick of raid battles, and it's not given a chance to truly be as enjoyable as it should be. In terms of difficulty, thankfully some challenge has returned to the Pokemon series. While Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield were so easy that they essentially played themselves, difficulty has been increased, yet never feels unfair. You can tackle badge challenges in any order, but they do not scale depending on your progress. Additionally, more difficult ones will not be available for you to reach at the beginning, as you'll need to unlock mobility options for your mount Pokemon first. The game does have an approximate order in mind for you to tackle the challenges. I went too far in the wrong direction initially, and ended up fighting higher level gym leaders, which was fun, but it meant I had to go back to the easier ones later, which posed no challenge at all. Still, it's a customizable experience, and no two players will have the exact same journey. Speaking of gym leaders, while gym battles are challenging and fun, each gym has a small minigame to complete before being able to challenge the gym leader. These range from rolling around a giant olive, going on a fetch quest, and a simple pressing of buttons according to on-screen prompts. These are not only laughably easy, but boring. A far cry from the navigational challenges previous games gyms posed. There are no ice sliding or teleportation puzzles to be found here. These minigames could have just been dropped altogether, as even small children would be bored by them. The Titans in the Path of Legends story are fun boss battles, and there isn't much to say except that they work well. The Team Star sections have a small minigame before challenging the leader. This minigame is also too easy and unnecessary, but narratively at least it gives you a feeling of raiding their base. It's similar to taking down bases in games like Far Cry and Metal Gear Solid 5, and wow, that's a weird comparison for Pokemon. Challenging bases leaders pits you against their giant car Pokemon, which while weird and unexpected, works as well as the Titan Pokemon. Overall, the challenge of Scarlet and Violet is a perfect level. However, all of the good that Scarlet and Violet do with the Pokemon gameplay formula is spoiled and undercut by its biggest problem: performance. What could have been? While this is the most fun I've had with Pokemon for years, the game's performance is an unacceptable mess. This game shipped in a condition I can only describe as unfinished. Poor textures, asset pop-in, and dropped frames are compounded by a frustrating myriad of glitches and bugs. In the week since launch, players around the world have shared glitches like falling through the floor, characters suddenly transforming into gigantic proportions, and avatars' heads spinning around like an anime version of The Exorcist. In my own experience, I had Pokemon clip through walls multiple times. When exploring a cave, I was attacked by a Pokemon who was hidden behind the texture of the cave wall. It had a name I'd never seen before, so I was battling a new Pokemon that I couldn't even see. After I caught it, I could finally see what it looked like when it was registered to my Pokedex. That's certainly a new way to discover a Pokemon. The game crashed on me twice during my first few days, but thankfully save data was intact. There's no nice way to say this, but it's unacceptable that one of the biggest multi-million-dollar gaming franchises allows a flagship title like this to launch in such a sorry state. date. Doubly so in the same year as Xenoblade Chronicles 3's launch. That game is also an open-world RPG, runs on the same console, is a far less popular IP, yet looks and performs infinitely better than this. We can only speculate as to what goes on behind the scenes of a franchise like Pokémon, and the role the franchise's various stakeholders play in the development and launch of a big game like this, but I can only conclude that this was rushed out the door to keep up with the billion-dollar merchandise juggernaut that is Pokémon. You could argue that the mainline games are just one pillar of the franchise, alongside the mobile games, anime, trading card game, and toys, but the mainline gaming pillar is the most important one. It's historically what started this franchise, gets the most engagement from fans, and sets the tone of what to follow for the other pillars. It's frustrating to witness as a fan and consumer that enough care and consideration was not put into this game's launch. Every exciting new change Scarlet and Violet brought to the series is let down by performance issues. Open world? You can't really see where to head to next when faraway assets won't load. Online co-op? Ruined by a poorly performing frame rate that can't keep up. How did this even happen? Pokémon Legends Arceus, which had its own issues, should have had more development time and should be coming out around now. Scarlet and Violet could have been held back a whole year to develop the game into an acceptable condition for launch. There was no need to rush these games either, as it feels like there's been too much Pokémon coming out in recent years. Game Freak and the Pokémon Company had a real chance to score a home run with this game, and they came so close, but the performance issues have soured the whole experience for players. However, being unkillable as this franchise is, the intellectual property will endure. It's been disappointing to see a lot of fans defend this game. As consumers and fans, you should feel it's your right to complain. Just because it's the most successful franchise in existence does not mean it's excused from criticism. When Cyberpunk 2077 launched in such a broken state, we didn't see people excusing the devs with statements like, "Oh, the dev team was under too much pressure," or "The underpowered console is holding this game back." While I'm no expert on game development, it's unacceptable, indefensible, and disappointing to launch a game like this, and is a massive letdown to lifelong fans. The soundtrack is nice, with pleasant, upbeat music throughout the game. Some tracks include Spanish guitars to match the Spanish-themed setting, and these are standout tracks, giving a new element to Pokémon music that we've not heard before. Undertale developer Toby Fox returns to score some of the more memorable tracks, and it's good to hear his returning and expanded presence here. His tracks are the best in the game, and he has upstaged all other contributing composers. While I generally think upbeat music is good, it is relentlessly so. While exploring the wilderness, you'll have cheerful, upbeat music in your ear every step of the way. It's a backward step from the adaptive, atmospheric, and sparingly used music of Legends Arceus. Instead of soft piano music as you explore dangerous mountain caves, you'll have cheery and bright melodies blasted the whole time, which causes tonal imbalance. Some battle themes offer some variation, like a crowd chanting introduced when a gym leader is on their final Pokémon, but some battle themes can be grating. A notable example is the Team Star battle theme, which is way too fast, noisy, and features a blaring electric guitar section. While it does match the characters of Team Star, it's just not pleasant to listen to. Overall, it's a decent soundtrack, but nothing you'll want to listen to outside of the game. Multi-billion-dollar pop star Ed Sheeran has contributed his bland and forgettable radio-friendly song Celestial for the game's closing credits. If Beige were a song, this would be its less interesting B-side. I cannot for the life of me understand why it's here. The lyrics have nothing to do with the game's themes, and it does not cap off the game like an ending theme should. Throughout the Switch's lifespan, we've heard a lot of good vocal theme songs in games, and by comparison, this one just feels like a soulless, cross-promotional opportunity. Frankly, this song should not even be in the game, and there is no reason to justify its inclusion. It's disappointing that they sprung for a pop star, but not even voice actors. Once again, there is not a trace of voice acting here, and it's frustrating that the mainline Pokémon series continues to leave its characters mute. There's a lot of dialogue in this game, and not all of it needs to be voiced, of course, but a little bit here and there would really improve the storytelling quality and allow the player to develop a greater emotional connection to the characters. As an example, an early scene has director Clavel giving a powerful speech to his students. It features dramatic camera angles and editing, yet he is shown just flapping his mouth with no sound coming out. It's a disappointing and confusing decision, especially as just this year on the Switch we saw games from smaller IP like Xenoblade and Fire Emblem Warriors with fully professionally voiced dialogue, and even recent spin-off Pokemon games like New Pokemon Snap including voice acting. Yet again, it's another example of how this game could have been something truly spectacular, but was sabotaged for no good reason. So, horrible performance issues and a lack of polish in certain areas prevent Scarlet and Violet from being the epic open-world adventure we've always wanted. Despite these, I still had a lot of fun with this game. Now, it's easy to see open world as the future of the Pokémon franchise, and this game establishes a confident template for the team to iterate and improve on. It's a much more challenging and emotionally satisfying experience than Sword and Shield, but not as exciting or refreshing as Legends Arceus. With a little bit more development time and more effort in certain areas, Scarlet and Violet could have been the best Pokémon games we've ever had, but it still misses that mark by a wide margin. Its unfinished build at launch will go down as one of the worst moments in the franchise's history, and undermines all of the better and more innovative aspects of the game. Overall, there is more good than bad here, but the bad aspects will stay with me for a long time, and I can only hope that they will be fixed by the time the next game in the series rolls around. So, have you played Pokémon Scarlet and Violet? Still on the fence? Did you find the performance issues as bad as I did, or am I being too harsh? Whatever you thought, please leave a comment down below, and I'll be replying to every one of them. If you found value in this review, please leave a like for the algorithm. It helps get my review out to more people, and more importantly, it warms the heart of this cynical and aging Pokémon fan. And if you'd like to see more game reviews like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for listening to me ramble, and I'll see you next time.